Now, as I mentioned, we have a few ways of graphing these quadratic functions. The first way, using a table, always will work. Sometimes it's more of a pain in the butt though, if your function moves to the left or right, because it's really hard to tell where to pick those points so you get that u. Let's look at this way. These are the properties of the graph. Remember that your quadratic is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. We can use the a, b, and c value to tell us specific points to graph on your parabola. So when you have a positive a value, when a is bigger than 0, when a is positive, your parabola is going to face up. Then, once you figure that out, that means that you're going to have a low vertex. Okay, remember the vertex is that point in the middle of your parabola where it can almost like fold over. The way to find that vertex, which works for all of these parabolas, is to take your b value, first your negative b value, so whatever your b value is, make it negative or the opposite, and divide by 2 times your a value. That will give you both the equation of your axis of symmetry, or you can say AOS, that's your axis of symmetry, and it'll also give you the x value of your vertex. Finally, your c value, your constant at the end, also has a purpose. That c value serves as your y-intercept. So anytime you want an extra point on your graph, you can take 0 for your x value, and then your c value will be your y-coordinate. Now if a is negative, only 2 things change. The first one is your parabola turns upside down. So that's what happened in the last one. We had a negative a value, and instead of your vertex being the lowest point on your graph, it is now the highest. So you have what we call a maximum. This before was a minimum. Take a second, hit pause if you need to, and write down the useful equations here. This is a really good section to have in your notes. Alright, here's another example. Here we have another quadratic. Now what we can do is we can make a XY table, but we don't want to do that because we don't know if my parabola is going to end up over here somewhere, and I don't want to try and guess what x values would make sense to go in there. So we're going to look at our parabola and kind of analyze it a little bit. What I always do first is I always list my a, b, and c value. So for my function, my a value is 2, my b value is negative 8, my c value is 6. I know that because my a value is positive, my parabola is going to face up. And I can take those a, b, and c values and put it through this little formula here, and that's going to tell me my axis of symmetry and half of my vertex. So I'm going to take negative 8 and put it in there for b. So I have negative 8. Remember, that formula is a negative. Divided by 2 times 2. When I simplify that a little bit, negative times negative is positive. I get 8 divided by 4, which gives me 2. So that means that at x equals 2, I have my axis of symmetry. And symmetry, I usually draw my symmetry line in with a dotted line, because it's not really a line on your graph per se, it's just a way to help you graph it. So this is, not y, this is x equals 2. This is your axis of symmetry. So now that we have our axis of symmetry, we know that my parabola is going to fold in half around that axis. However, we need to take our x value, plug it into my equation to figure out the y value so I can put my vertex. Because right now, I don't know if I'm up here or down here. I don't know where I am. We got to figure it out. So we're going to take 2 and plug it into this equation here. We're going to go y equals 2 times 2 squared minus 8 times 2 plus 6. So you guys take a minute. I'm going to erase and clean up our work a little bit so it looks a little neater. I want you guys to simplify this and tell me, you can't really tell me, but write it in your notes and we'll check it, what your y value is. Okay, so you guys are super awesome at doing your order of operations and all that. Once you went through and calculated that, you should have gotten y equals -2. So once you did that, you should have gotten y equals -2. That means that is the other half of my vertex. So I'm going to go on my graph and I'm going to plot the point 2, -2. That is the point on my graph that I need. So this is good. We're doing good here. Now, I know my parabola faces up because that a value is positive. So that means that this vertex is going to be the lowest point, right? My parabola faces up. So my vertex is the lowest point of my graph, or the minimum. So I know my parabola is going to face up. Now, all I have to do is to get that y-intercept on there, okay, and then another point if we need it. Remember, we said that the y-intercept uses that constant at the end, that c value. Okay, so since my c value is 6, I'm going to take 6 and plug it in and make that a point with 0. So 6 becomes my y-intercept. So I'm going to go on the y-axis and plot the point 0, 6. Now all that's left, I have a vertex, I have a y-intercept. I just want to get at least 1 or 2 more points on there. So I'm going to just pick a value for x. I know because my parabola faces up, it's going to cross the y-axis at 6. And this vertex is my lowest point. So according to my graph, it looks like picking x equals 1 would be a wise decision. So I'm going to take 1, and I'm going to plug it in to my equation to see what I get for y. 2 times 1 squared minus 8 times 1 plus 6. If I go through and do my order of operations, I'm going to end up with 0. So according to my graph, another point could be 1, 0, right there. And then what's really cool about parabolas, I don't have to plug in any more points. This line is my axis of symmetry. Anytime a parabola has symmetry, that means that every point on one side can just be reflected over to the other side. We just have to be careful that it's the same distance away from your axis of symmetry. So this point, 1, 0, I notice it's 1 spot away from my axis of symmetry. So I can pretend it gets reflected over that line and just make sure it's also 1 away. Same thing with this y-intercept. This one is 2 away. I'm going to go to the other side, 2 away. Now I can draw in that U shape, and voila, I have a parabola. My suggestion to you guys, go ahead and pick a few out of your book or try the examples just to give yourself practice, and we'll do more in class.